What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Thursday, everybody. Second video of the day. As I talk to you guys, there's already a lot of mobilization to find Brian. So just a little update. There's people on the ground, people from law enforcement, even remote viewing groups are trying to find them. And just for everybody who wanted a little update on that. But thank you to everyone who's responding to this, to everyone who's sharing. We hope that people can find Brian and he's safe. And also, the video that Kai Dickens took down, she put it back up. I put it in a pinned comment underneath the video, and they explained on a pinned comment on that video why they took it down. And I think you guys should see it. It is pretty startling, but with the added context, you can understand better what made Kai react that way. But let's continue with the positive reactions from Jesse Michels' documentary about the NASCA Tridactyls, because we already saw that Joe Rogan is raving about it and almost every subsequent podcast that he's recording. And today, my friend Vinnie Adams from Disclosure Team had none other than Dr. Garry Nolan to discuss the Tridactyls for about half an hour or 40 minutes. I am going to show you a little snippet where he discusses a specific aspect of the Tridactyls, the larger bodies, that he considers is really difficult, if not impossible, to hoax. I'm talking about the fingerprints because they are really unbelievable when you see them. But Dr. Garry Nolan is completely right when he discusses the many different trials and tribulations that have gone through this entire case. And he and I agree on pretty much everything. The fact that those little bodies that I don't know if they're real or not, I tend to incline towards them not being real, them being ancient constructions. Besides the dolls that the Ministry of Culture showed there, which are recent and they are fake. He and I agree that the fact that they were shown in the Mexican Congress did not help the case because those seem to be constructed. However, Dr. Nolan does seem convinced that the larger bodies need more studying because he went on a really detailed explanation on what the DICOM files are, which is what Gonzalo facilitated for everybody through his website, tridactyls.org. And also Thierry Jamon and the alienproject.com, he already facilitated a lot of that too. That is measurable. And that is something that a scientist like Dr. Nolan can easily see and easily dismiss as a hoax. And the fact that he's talking about these DICOM files and how important they are, I think that was a significant step forward for the whole investigation because everybody within either ufology or the scientific community agrees that when somebody that qualified talks about a case like this with such respect, people tend to pay attention. And I think this is what will happen when people hear what Dr. Nolan says about the Tridactyls. And I want to thank Vinnie for preparing this interview. They were very thorough. Vinnie and I have spoken a little bit in the background, and we both agreed right now that's where I lean towards, that these might be a new species of hominid. And if that's the case, regardless, it would be a historic discovery. I do agree with Dr. Nolan as well that there's people jumping the gun trying to say that these are alien just because they find that the DNA is like unknown or appears to be unknown, but it's really probably diluted DNA. That doesn't mean they're alien. And that is something that we also agree on. And also another thing that we also agree on, and probably the reason why I don't really make that many updates on the mummies, is that whenever there's a lot of media attention to a scientific case that is already really complicated and convoluted, that makes the whole process behind the scenes for scientists way more difficult. And this is something that when I emailed Dr. Nolan way back in 2023, because I did after I interviewed Jaime, that's what Dr. Nolan explained to me. He told me that If there were cameras there, no scientist would feel comfortable doing that unless they were like media savvy and they didn't really care for the whole scientific process to move forward as it should be, which is behind closed doors. Because you can find like a piece of data that is probably compelling, but then eventually down the road you find another piece of data that contradicts this other piece of data, and that makes it all even more convoluted. And Dr. Nolan already went through this with the Atacama skeleton. He was criticized for what he did in that study. That is more than likely what made him take a step back from this case, from the Tridactyls. But now that there is a lot of more compelling data out there, the DICOM files were released, people like him are starting to pay more attention. And I think that's very valuable for the case. Thanks to Jesse Michels, that coverage made it so more people turned to the case. And now with Dr. Nolan fully giving his opinion about it, I think that is going to help as well. And I'm just going to show you the piece where he mentions the fingerprints, which I thought was the most interesting part of the whole interview with Vinnie about the Tridactyls, because they discussed a lot of different really interesting stuff about Skywatcher and other things. But this part was interesting. And shout out to Wixie, because his account was deleted, the previous one. I used to post a lot of the stuff that he posted. Now that he's back, I'm going to start posting more of his stuff. But this is what he clipped from that interview on the Disclosure Team podcast with Vinnie Adams.
Now, one of the things that I found interesting were the fingerprints that seemed to be of a different character than you would expect from human or monkey. So if we were considering that these things were constructed, or hoaxed,
sure.
The fact that they have fingerprints is interesting. There's these tidbits of information that still, give me, diplomatic hope that there's something there, but I don't even know who controls the things now. Is it the Peruvian government? Is it some museum? Is it scientists? What access do they have? What are they allowed to do? All of these things are just, I haven't spent the time to look into them because I've got my own work to do.
Of course. I mean, it just sounds like it's just one big complete mess. And rather than sticking on this subject, I suppose my last question would be to limit any more sort of damage to the credibility of them. What would you ideally like to see, or what do you think academia would like to see the next step be in legitimizing it any further?
Well, I think the anatomists have had their say, and they say that they can't see it, any evidence of construction in the limited number of samples, the large ones, not the little puppet things that got pulled out at the Mexican Congress. That did all the damage necessary to destroy the credibility of anything that came after. The DNA damage, the DNA analysis that I just told you about.
Sure, right.
That would be the one that I think should be done first.
Sort of set the gold standard for the next things to come after, right?
And on that note, I do want to say a couple of things before I show you the next news, because this is news. Dr. Nolan is right about the way in which the credibility of the case was hurt. And it's paradoxical because, ironically, if Jaime Maussan hadn't gotten involved in the case, it wouldn't be as popular as it is right now. But it also hurt the credibility because what he showed were more than likely constructions, ancient ones, I think, but constructions. And those affected the specimens that are in Peru that are like our size, sort of, a little shorter than humans. But yeah, it's what Dr. Nolan said. Anatomists and specialists from different countries agree that these are morphologically coherent. And that's what's important. And we can't jump the gun to say these are alien, these are whatever. We can speculate. I speculate that these may be a new species of hominids. And Dr. Nolan also agrees that if that's the case, it would be earth shattering, he said. And I agree. It would be a massive discovery for anthropology. And that's where we stand right now. And the one thing that will fix and tell us definitively what these are is the DNA analysis. And today, a new step was taken towards that. So I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is from the space from last Sunday. Representative Eric Burlison responded to a question about the mummies, and this is what he said.
I think that the mummies that I saw are probably fake. The ones that were in Mexico City. I was hoping that I was going to see the larger mummies, the ones that Jesse Michels just recently saw. But that was not the case. So I guess in order to see those, you got to fly to Peru with special permission. And Peru is not exactly, and Mexico City is not exactly the safest place to go to.
Well, that's why we appreciate you, Congressman Burlison, putting boots on the ground and even going out there checking this stuff out. I mean, the fact that you went down there, and again, to remind the audience, I recall, Eric, you went down there because Grush suggested, hey, you know what? Some of the stuff I've come across in paperwork matches the morphology of the larger mummy that's down there. Maybe go check it out. Am I correct there?
Yeah, let me nuance that. Like, Grush did not tell me to go down and spend time with Greer and Jaime Maussan. In fact, he kind of warned against that. But what he did say is that there is that the mummies that he's seen, and the larger mummies that are in Peru, are consistent with things that he's seen in his time, of his official time, and that they were worth going to see. So I went there hoping to see, hoping that those would be the mummies that we were going to see. Turned out that they weren't. But the other reason why I felt that it was a worthwhile trip is that there were U.S. scientists that contract with NASA that were headed down there to take samples of the Boogosphere. And if they're going to take it seriously and be there and take the samples, I wanted to be there to see it for myself and to see them take the samples.
On that note, and I do got some breaking news. This news comes from Mr. Jesus Alberto Tlaxcalteco. This is the man who arranged the hearings in Mexico to happen. He's the one with all the pull there, with all the influence there. And he's also speaking to politicians in Peru. And according to information that he provided, there is one congressman from Peru. His name is Germán Tacuri. According to Jesus Alberto, the Congress of Peru has received his statements of this clip that I just showed you, and they're taking them very seriously. So now, according to this report, they are going to officially invite him as a distinguished guest for the next hearing that is going to take place in Peru about the Tridactyls, which will be the second hearing that they have in the last year. When Dr. Garry Nolan said that he didn't know who was in control of the bodies, it is a tricky one because on one side, I feel that the whole Vaquero Mafia are the ones in control of the site, I would say. And Mr. Jaime Maussan does have control to a certain extent of the bodies that are at Ica University in Peru. And then Thierry Jamon also has access to some of the bodies himself from Cusco's Incari Institute. But the ones with the final say will always be the Peruvian government. And the fact that they are presumably now and reportedly taking seriously what Representative Burlison said, this has the potential to move the case forward tremendously. Because what we need, as Dr. Garry Nolan stated correctly, is the better DNA analysis that can confirm what these are. And the way to move forward with this is to get permission from the government of Peru, get permission to one of these entities like Colossal, which was mentioned on Jesse Michels' documentary, to gain access to samples and get proper DNA analysis on these, and once and for all determine what these are, if this is a new species of hominid or whatever. And I think this is very encouraging, if you ask me. Dr. Garry Nolan talking about these, describing the parts that he thinks are very, very interesting and worth looking at. Also, and I need to remind you guys of this, Dr. Garry Nolan had already said that these were worth looking at. Last year, Matt Ford at the Good Trouble Show had Dr. O'Connor speaking about the Tridactyls, showing a lot of the data, and Dr. Nolan had already positioned himself to say that these are very interesting and are worth looking at. So just keep that in mind, yeah? And Peru potentially inviting Representative Burlison to their next hearing on the Tridactyls in Peru, which is what Representative Burlison should have done in the first place. Probably he could have skipped that trip to Mexico. I'm sure he had a fun time though, but what he needs in order to really look at these specimens is going to Peru. And if it happens through an official invitation from the government of Peru, even better. So let's see what happens. I'll keep you guys posted on everything. Let me know what you think about the interview that Vinnie Adams did with Dr. Nolan. And let me know what you think about the news of Representative Burlison potentially being invited to Peru to the hearing as a special guest. Let me know. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most, so thank you. But if you want to support us in other ways, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. Anything you choose to do is always appreciated, so thank you. And that's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive like Dr. Garry Nolan and Representative Burlison always. Bye.